I often hear people say, when I have an X amount of money in my bank account, I'll start enjoying life. When I'm a billionaire, I'll be happy. I'm not peeing all over your dreams, but what if you actually don't become a billionaire? What percentage of people in the world are billionaires anyway? Less than 1%. And research has proven that an increase in income doesn't necessarily correlate with an increase in fulfillment and happiness. And from experience, I've realized that a lot of us who are often feel like we have to defer our happiness until a time when we have an X amount of money in our bank account are those of us who've gone through one form of poverty or another. And so what happens is that you know that if you've gone through any form of poverty, your relaxation time often becomes your worry time. So you want to relax, but then you're immediately pulled into this state where you have to worry about your bills, basic things such as for your food, shelter, clothing, and most importantly, your debt, your high level of debt that you often don't have a plan on how to pay for, or you don't have the skills to know how to pay for, or rather you actually don't know whether you'll ever attain whether you'll ever attain debt freedom. And so because if you've been in the Wealth Tribe long enough, if you've been reading my blog long enough, then you know that I have often shared that in my childhood, I went through a level of poverty, and I've also experienced poverty in my adulthood. And so I know this too well. But because at this point in my life, in my late 20s, I have established a level of discipline and habits that make me continually achieve my financial goals, I can say now that in my late 20s, I feel a bit safer in my financial freedom journey, and I can dare say that once in a while, I feel rich. Once in a while, I feel rich. And so if you're wondering, Agatha, what does it mean to feel rich? Feeling rich is about feeling like you're in control of your time and your money. It's about being in control of the uncertainty of life for the most part anyway. And as Emma says, money is a concept. What gives money value is that it can buy an abundance of time, supplies, and space and options. With this in mind, the feeling of richness doesn't come from money itself, but from those things that money can buy. This means that you can feel rich even on a tight budget if you feel like you have those options. And so, if you want to feel rich, I encourage you to work towards a lifestyle where you feel calm, collected, secure, and safe. And so in this video, I'm going to teach you how you can achieve a rich life, as always, on a budget. My name is Agatha from the Wealth Tribe, and this is where we learn how to build wealth together. Now that you understand what it means to feel rich, I'm going to take you through the 11 ways that you can spend less, feel rich, and still stick on your budget. Point number 1, control or manage your debt. So one of the downsides of being an adult is that your introduction to adulthood is debt. For most of us, we graduate from uni or college with a massive amount of debt, I included. And I already did a video on how I became debt-free in 4.5 years by paying my higher education, loans with debt, and I will attach the video for you to see. And unfortunately, the same system that introduces us to the job search market with a massive amount of debt is the same system that doesn't give us the financial literacy skills for us to understand how to navigate the world of debt. And so what happens, you start working, and because you already have a massive amount of debt, and most of us, our first jobs are poor paying jobs, you end up even in more debt because you end up having to rely on taking mobile money loans, using a credit card, borrowing from family, and borrowing from family, or even borrowing from friends. And so, but in like 2 years of being in the job market, you even have more debt than you started with, which is sad. But since clearly it seems that it's almost impossible to escape the debt trap as a young adult, the best way to feel rich the best way to feel rich is to be in control of your debt. Is to be in control of your debt or to manage your debt. And so when I was in debt, I used to have I made a list of all the debts that I had, and then every end of the month I would budget an X amount of money that would go towards paying off my debts. And so at the end of every month, I would pay an X amount of money. I would pay an X amount of money towards reducing my debt, and then subtract that amount of money from my overall debt. And by doing this, I would feel that I'm in control of my debt, because every end of the month I have less and less debt. And so I encourage you to do the same. Come up with a list of all the debts that you have. Also create a simple Excel sheet that has a list of all the debts that you have, the amount of interest that you're paying, and how long you have for you to clear this debt. And include in your budget, how much money. Create a budget that informs you how much money can you comfortably afford to pay towards getting rid of this debt. And if you're struggling with budgeting, I have a customizable budget tracker that you can use, and I will link it in the description. You can use this budget tracker, and it will help you determine how much money from your paycheck you can comfortably afford to pay towards this debt. And so feeling rich is simply being in a position where you're in control of your debt, as opposed to, because a lot of us, instead of taking this path, most of us instead hide from our debts for as many years as we can. And so when you hide from your debt, what is happening is that even if you're avoiding and hiding from your debt, remember the financial institution or the person who loaned you this money is still adding towards your interest. And so when you hide, you're still accumulating interest, your debt is still becoming bigger. And for most of us, the bigger the debt, the more scared we become, and the more the cycle of avoidance continues. And so I encourage you to make an Excel sheet with all your debt and start coming up with a plan on how to get rid of the debt. And when you are in a position where you're controlling your debt, when you're in control of your debt, what will happen is that you will feel more calm and collected. And actually, this is the feeling that people who are rich or people who feel rich get to enjoy. And this feeling of being calm and collected is not something reserved for just the rich people. It can also be your portion. So come up with a debt payoff plan. And if you're struggling to come up with one, I will link one in the description box. Point number 2 and before we move on from this point, there's a very nice quote from Ashley Seaford, one of my best writers, Ashley Seaford, and this is what she says about being in control of your money. Hiding from your money problems exacerbates them. But it's impossible to stop hiding without first overcoming shame. When you start talking about money, whether that's your bad spending decisions or growing up in poverty, only then can you get rid of the shame surrounding it. So stop being ashamed of the amount of debt that you have, but instead come up with a debt payoff plan. Point number 2, about how to feel rich, even on your budget. Have accountability meetings with yourself. Date your money. I always insist, date your money. And one way to do this is that at the end of every month, get all your receipts, get all your M-Pesa messages, get your bank statement, sit down with yourself at your table or even at your couch, audit your expenses. Ask yourself, how much money did I spend eating out this month? How much money did I spend towards securing my future? How much money do I want to be investing moving forward? How much money do I want to go towards my travel expenses going forward? How will I reduce my expenses moving forward? And so through having these meetings with yourself, and I created a whole video that has all these 11 questions that you can use to audit your expenses at the end of every month, which will enable you to make better financial decisions or to make better financial goals for yourself. And I will insert the video up here for you. And so at the end of every month, form a system where you audit your expenses by asking yourself those questions. Update your net worth sheet. And so your net worth is your assets, things that have value, minus your liability, such as debt. Update your net worth Excel sheet so that you know, are you moving towards achieving financial freedom or not? And at the end of every month, auditing your expenses, come up with your mini goals that you're going to work towards in the coming goals. And you can also, if you're scared of having this accountability system with yourself, you can also have it with your partner or a friend. And also, if you need a financial coach to take you through this accountability system, I'm here, I'm your girl. Leave a comment section and I'll reach out to you, and we can see how we can create for you a financial accountability system with yourself. And so what happens if you form a system where you're accountable for your money, where you sit down at the end of every month and you ask yourself these very important questions? What will happen is that at the end of every month, you will feel in control of your finances and in control of your financial future. And anyway, at the end of the day, rich people, as we like to imagine, are in control of their future. And so by simply being accountable about your expenses, you will have that feeling of feeling calm, collected, and in control of your future. All right, so point number 3 on how to feel rich: live below your means. Living below your means is one thing that will leave you feeling like Wonder Woman or Superman, actually, because living below your means is a state where if you earn X amount of money and you spend Y, if you earn X amount of money and you spend Y, X minus Y should equals a positive number, which means that at the end of every month, you have an X amount of money that is left for you to save and invest. And isn't that what we imagine rich people are anyway? We imagine that rich people are the type of people that at the end of every month have an X amount of money, or an amount of money that is left at the end of their paycheck to save and invest. And this is something that you can also achieve. Make sure you're living living below your means. And living below your means means living within your budget. And I said earlier in the video, I have a customizable budget tracker that you can use to come up with a system that allows you to live below your means, to spend less every month than you earn. And anyway, one of my favorite quotes that encourages me to always live below your means is from this book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. If you've been here long enough, you know that I'm obsessed with this book. And so the quote about living with your means that I love from him is, Naval says that people who live far below their means enjoy a freedom that people busy upgrading their lifestyle can't fathom. Once you've truly controlled your own fate, for better or for worse, you'll never let anyone tell you what to do. So you have to come up with a system that lets you live below your means, because that is what rich people do. Point number 4, pay your bills on time. Show me a better feeling than paying all your bills and waking up the next day, paying your bills today, waking up tomorrow and knowing that, all my bills are paid. Every time I do that, every time I wake up and I know that my rent, my utility bills, my cleaning lady, everyone is paid. All my basic bills are paid. I feel rich. I feel that I'm in control of my future. And so this is what I encourage you. Before you indulge in any luxuries, make sure that all your basic bills are paid. Make sure your rent is paid. Make sure your electricity bill is paid. Make sure your water is paid. Make sure your fridge is packed with the food that you need in order to survive the whole month to the best of your ability. Because by doing this, you will honestly feel rich, because one of the luxuries that rich people get to enjoy is paying their bills before they are due. And for sure, if you can get yourself to a point where you're able to pay the bills before you're due, getting yourself to a point where you pay your bills before somebody knocks on your door and tells you when are you going to pay your rent, then for sure you'll be experiencing a luxury that only rich people get to enjoy. And by the way, this is not, I have come across people who are wealthy, and by wealthy I mean people who earn a lot of income, but still they're living paycheck to paycheck. So this paying bills on time is not something that being able to pay your bills on time or being unable to pay your bills on time is not only a struggle that people who have low income struggle with. Even wealthy people struggle with this thing where they live paycheck to paycheck. And so therefore I encourage you that as soon as you get your paycheck, do the basics, pay your basic bills, and then indulge in luxuries. And in this way, you'll put in your position where and put in your place in a position, you put yourself in a position again where you feel calm and collected, because you know you've got your act together. Point number 5, build an emergency fund. As I always ask in this channel, if you lost your job tomorrow, how many months would you survive without slipping back into poverty? How many months? And so I have come to realize from experience and from coaching people that an emergency fund is a source of confidence. And confidence is mostly, a high level of confidence is mostly something we see with rich people. And so just by building your 6 months worth of emergency fund, it means you're taking yourself towards a situation where you always feel rich month to month. And so for me, as somebody who has ever experienced a high level of debt, when I think that there's an amount of money just sitting in my bank account, in the form of my emergency fund, just sitting in my bank account, idle money just sitting in my bank account, sitting there just waiting for a situation where I have an emergency. That's the only time I spend that amount of money. This gives me a feeling of richness, moving from having massive amounts of debt, anxiety, my relaxation time turning into my worry time. And now I am in a situation where I have an emergency fund. That money is just sitting in my account waiting for a situation when I have where I have an emergency. Girl, tell me, show me another way, show me another definition of feeling rich. That for me is top tier luxury, and I encourage you to do the same. Build your emergency fund, because for sure it will give you a source of confidence, as I said, that is reserved for the rich, and it will also improve your sleep. You will definitely sleep better knowing that you have a 6 months emergency fund. And I've also realized on this point of emergency fund, from experience, I've also realized that there's so many of us who are in jobs where, yes, you have a medical insurance, but that medical insurance doesn't cover stuff such as optical, your dental visit. It doesn't cover a visit to a urologist. As a man, it doesn't cover a visit to a gynecologist for us girlies. And so if you don't have an emergency fund, it means that if you had a toothache, if you needed new glasses, if you needed to see your gyna, then you wouldn't be able to do that because your medical cover at work doesn't cover it. But if you have an emergency fund, any of these things, you can actually tell any of these things, dare me, I've got the money. And so there's no better way of feeling in control of your future, improving your sleep and your confidence than having a 6 month emergency fund. And because of late the level of inflation is so high, and because a lot of financial analysts are predicting a recession, I would encourage you to push it further. Don't just have a 6 months emergency fund. Push it further, make it a year, more than a year, as much as you can, while at the same time balancing your other investment portfolio. Build your emergency as much as you can, your emergency fund as much as you can, because if a recession happens, or when a recession happens, the difference between those people who will have an emergency fund and those ones who will not have one will be visible. Just like it will be visible, just like what the COVID-19 pandemic showed us in terms of our level of financial preparedness. Point number 6, always have your house supplies. There's no better feeling. Okay, I know I've used this statement a lot in this video, but honestly, there's no better feeling than having what you need before you need it. I feel very happy that I don't have to rush to the shop anytime one roll of tissue gets finished. Imagine being in a situation where you have, for a full month, you have all the house supplies, may it be your groceries, may it be your cleaning materials, may it be stuff such as tissue, your favorite shower gel. Imagine being in a situation where you have all these things in stock. And so, again, being someone who has experienced poverty before, I have experienced a situation where you have this one roll of tissue and you're praying that it doesn't end before the end of the month, because that is the only time you can afford to get yourself another one. And one of the best ways to get yourself to this situation, again, is budgeting. Having a budget where I spend X amount of money on groceries, I spend X amount of money on my housing supplies, I spend X amount of money on my cleaning supplies. And so at the end of the month, when your money hits your account, you put this money towards these categories accordingly. And so one other trick I learned from a friend about my house supplies is that before you travel, my friend told me that if you want to feel even richer or even in more control of your finances, before you travel, before you take a trip to anywhere, because I mean, most of us, our definition of richness is being able to travel on a whim. So he told me that before you travel, go to the supermarket or wherever you get your house supplies and groceries, and pack your fridge and buy all your house supplies before you travel. Because if you take a trip and you overspend and you come back to your house and you do not have the house supplies that you need, you're going to hate yourself. You're going to feel guilty for the trip that you took. So a life hack that I'm sharing with you: before you take a trip, buy your house supplies, buy your groceries, the ones that you can refrigerate anyway, and then travel. Go wherever you want to go, because at the end of it all, when you come back home, you will feel luxurious and you will feel rich because you've come back home with a house full of supplies. Point number 7, talk about money with your partner. Now that we've established that feeling rich is being in a situation where you feel calm and in control of your money, the only way one of the best ways to work towards feeling calm and control of your money is talking about money. Most of us are stuck in the financial situations that we are stuck in because we don't talk about money. We don't ask for help. And if you have a partner that you can have these money conversations with, have that conversation, because that situation will help you come up with a support system. Because your partner, if you're in the right relationship, your partner is supposed to be your financial support system. And so talking about money will put you in a situation where you'll have a financial support system, and this support system, you're going to come up with ways in a way that you're going to be steering your financial boat in the same direction. Because trust me, I have met couples who they're in the same marriage, but they don't share how much money they make. They don't share what financial freedom means to each of them. And so when one partner is steering a boat towards north, the other partner is steering the boat towards south, and that is disastrous, because it means that as a couple you'll never attain financial freedom, or you'll never get to a point where you feel in control and therefore feeling rich. And there's one thing that I learned about being in the right relationship financially, and I learned this from Chelsea from the Financial Diet. And she says, over the past few years, I've learned that to be good with money is like a good long-term relationship. Instead of everything being chaotic peaks of highs and lows, there's a more quiet, sustained happiness that allows you to plan for the future, feel safe and comfortable, and really figure out what you want in life. You know, imagine being in a situation where you're in such a relationship, and the only way to start it off or to kick off this process is talk about money with your partner. Point number 8, treat yourself without feeling guilty. And so a lot of us are in this situation where we experience a lot of guilt when we indulge in luxury. And it's understandable, because most of us haven't mastered how to make a budget, a customized budget for us. And so once in a while, or not even once in a while, all the time, anytime I mention the buzzword budgeting, a lot of us don't like hearing the word budget, because most of us think that budgeting equals being restrictive, or budgeting equals being in some form of jail term. No, I'm here to tell you that budgeting, having a custom-made budget, means being in a situation where you direct your money towards what matters to you. You know, budgeting is not restrictiveness. Budgeting is about making that thing that excites you possible. So if traveling is what excites you, if chilling with your girlfriend is what excites you, if chilling with your boys is what excites you, then it's possible for you to create a custom-made budget that makes those things that excite you possible. And so budgeting, if you really master your budget, it means that you can put yourself in a situation where you're able to afford those things that excites you. And most of the time, these things that excite us are luxury. So having a good budget means that you're able to afford the luxuries that you've always fantasized about. And so And when you can comfortably, through your budget, afford the things that you fantasize about, it means that you will be able to treat yourself without guilt, as opposed to going on a trip or going out with your friends and coming back and looking at the receipts and hating yourself for it. Okay, so feeling rich is equals treating yourself without guilt, because anyway, I'm sure this is one of the other things that we fantasize about, or that we think about when we think about rich people. Point number 9, how do you feel rich on a budget? Have a clean house without clutter. I always say, your environment determines how calm you are. Living in a chaotic environment, living in a chaotic house is catastrophic to your mental health. And so have a decluttering routine. Have a situation where, for me personally, at the end of every month, mostly every 2 months, if I'm being honest, at the end of every 2 months, I go through my closet. I look at the things that spark joy. I look at the clothes that spark joy, the clothes that I still like, the clothes that still make me feel good. And if there are clothes that don't fall into that category, clothes that still don't fit and stuff, I give them out. I donate them out, or sometimes if they're still brand new, I sell them. And so through this situation, I don't have clutter around me. And this happens even in my living room, even in my kitchen. I go through the things that I don't use, the things that don't bring me joy, the things that I no longer like, and declutter them. And by doing this, by giving these things or by selling these things, it means that I leave a lot of space in my house. I have no clutter in my house, and this contributes towards my mental health. This contributes towards me feeling more calm and in control of my life. And another thing that I do to make sure that I live in a clean, clutter-free environment or house is, before I sleep, I clean my dishes. I make sure that my living room, I put things in my living room where they're supposed to be, so that the next morning when I wake up to a clean house that encourages productivity. And this is a hack I learned from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, by the way, in that you encourage your own productivity by waking up to a clean house. And I mean, most of us, when we fantasize about where rich people live, we fantasize about a well-organized house and a clean house. And this is something that is just not reserved for the rich. This is something that all of us can achieve, because again, we imagine that being rich is having that rich aesthetic, having houses where everything is in its place. And so you can achieve that. This is not something that is reserved for the rich. Number 10, make time for your hobbies. The truth is that being rich or achieving financial freedom equals to having free time. Free time to do whatever you want, to hang out with whoever you want, to do the kind of job that brings you joy, to take up your passion projects. That is what feeling rich or being rich is all about. And so I would encourage you, but there's this thing that I always tell my friends, because it's something that I learned, though late. It's something that I realized, that if you can swim, if you can dance, if you can drive a car, and if you can ride a bicycle, then the quality of your life improves. Because if you go out with your friends, then you can hit the dance floor and enjoy the good time with your friends. If you go to the coast, or if you go somewhere where there is a swimming pool, you can swim, and therefore you're enjoying life. If you go to a forest, or if you go to a place that has bikes, you can ride a bike, and that excitement means that your life is more exciting and is more happy. And I mean, being rich most of the time equals being happy. And if you can drive, it means that even if you don't have a car, once in a while you can have a car and you can take a road trip, or even when you're taking a road trip with your friends, you can drive for some miles as your friends drive for the others. And so if you can swim, if you can drive, if you can ride a bicycle, and if you can dance, if all these 4 hobbies are part of your life, then your quality of your life improves. And so I encourage you to be very deliberate about how you spend your free time. Be very intentional about the type of hobbies that you take up. If you're interested in learning a music instrument, be deliberate, include it in your budget. I always say life is for the living, and the more you're enjoying life, the more that you feel that there is a cause to live even a longer life. And one other thing that I learned from the financial diet about being intentional with my life is that know that you will have a million different passions and desires and dreams. Know that you will have a million different passions and desires and dreams in life, and that being savvy with money will be the difference between never giving yourself permission to pursue them and being able to live without them. So you want a situation where you're not just working, you're also enjoying life on a daily basis. And by these, I don't mean taking up expensive hobbies. They can be as cheap as hanging out with your friends, but be very intentional, as opposed to spending your whole weekend on your couch binge watching TV shows. Not that this is terrible, but we all know, and research has proven, that going out, enjoying the sun, enjoying your environment equals more happiness. Point number 11 on how to feel rich even on a budget: practice gratitude. As opposed to being a hamster on a wheel where you're always looking for the next big thing. Put yourself in a situation where you're also enjoying the here and now. And this is the topic of today's video, right? Enjoy the here and now. Feel rich today. You don't have to postpone feeling happy when you have when you have an X amount of money in your bank account, or if it ever happens, when you become a billionaire. And so feeling rich is getting yourself in a situation where you spend less than you earn, you enjoy your life, and live for the here and now. As I always say on the Wealth Tribe, life is for the living. Live on a budget. Give yourself the opportunity to enjoy the luxuries, the happiness, and the joys that life has to offer. Life is for the living.